Hello and welcome. I'm Michael Klein, principal of Klein for Retail Consulting, and I'm really excited. We're here at Shop Talk 2025, and I'm very excited about today's topic because it's all about data and the 2025 Unified Commerce benchmark for specialty retail. I'm joined with Sung Ruckstuhl from Manhattan Associates, the SVP and CMO, and Giri Agarwal, the Chief Strategy Officer at Incisiv. So, Anne, why don't you tell everybody who you are and what you do at Manhattan Associates?
Well, first of all, great to be here. The Shop Talk this year is awesome.
Isn't it?
Lots of energy, absolutely. We're having all kinds of fun. But, I'm an educator, if you will, from Manhattan, and we're all about unified commerce, blurring the line between physical and online shopping so that all the retailers here can convert better, serve better, and get higher customer lifetime value. So that's what we're all about, and very excited to be here to talk about this topic.
Yeah, it's a great report. I've had a chance to take a look. Giri, my old buddy, tell us about yourself a little bit.
Yeah, not much more to add than what you just shared, but again, I echo Anne's sentiment. Just lovely to be able to be at Shop Talk, amazing event, and be, as I say, in the best seat in the house, right? Listening from the two of you amazing folk. Truly appreciative, I think, of, we're data nerds as sort of Incisiv, which is really an industry insights, independent, focused firm. We take on ambitious ideas, and the Unified Commerce benchmark was one of this, and truly appreciative of Manhattan's partnership with us to sort of support something that is so amazing, so ambitious to be able to go out there and then serve the industry. So looking forward to chatting about it.
Yeah. So I'm going to take you guys through a few series of questions and topics that we want to cover. From my own perspective, this is so important because of what customers and consumers are looking for today. That they're agnostic to the channel, they don't care. And I've never been a big fan of the term omni-channel. It's whether you call it omni-channel or multi-channel or hybrid, and of course today the new term is unified, right? Because that's the name of the report, and that's what everybody is talking about here at the show and on the floor. But it is business as usual, right? It's how you have to behave. It's how you have to run your business is in this unified fashion. Because the customer is in every different channel these days.
Yep.
So with that in mind, I'd love to hear from you, Anne. What was the catalyst? What drove Manhattan to work with Incisiv to go ahead and do this benchmark this year?
So I think one thing about retail is everybody are dealing with consumers who are savvier than the retailers. I mean, we call this the blue dot consumer today. When you pop on your iPhone, there's a dot that's like, pulsating, that's where you are. And you expect all the retailer to come to you, serve you, know you, whether you're shopping online, go to their stores or the pop-up, right? So I think the part that we're excited about, us and Google Cloud sponsoring Incisiv research, is that a lot of brands will do go shopping. And they will kind of benchmark themselves on how well do they do shopping, presentation, how well they do checkout, fulfillment, and customer service. But it's uneven. And there's no way you can cover your whole retail industry. So we need something empirical. We need something that literally, it's kind of like you want to run the Ironman. You have to have certain benchmark on what numbers you have to hit for running, for swimming, for biking.
Yeah.
So for us, it's a gift to the retail industry to have Incisiv come in and rate everybody through real shopping trips. And Giri can talk about this. So it's through real purchases, return, exchange, all kinds of things that each brand gets a rating. And you can see average, you can see how well the leaders do certain things and what what other things that people need to do to catch up to them. So we feel that to keep up with today's consumers, you really have to be in a continuous improvement mode.
Yep.
And this benchmark hopefully give them a roadmap to start it in a very methodical way.
So I won't give anything away too much, but it's quite often that we see a brand focusing, as you talked about, the 4 important stages of the customer journey, that an organization may only be focusing on 1, 2, or 3, but not all 4.
Right.
And I think that came out a little bit in the study because the percentage of leaders is relatively small.
Very small.
Yeah.
But I also want to say, don't get overwhelmed. Pick an area that has the biggest ROI. So, but take that first step. But if you don't take the first step, then you're not going to be able to address today's consumer and convert their mind share into wallet share.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So Giri, give us a little bit of behind the scenes look at what was the methodology? How did you go about this research?
Sure. I think Anne touched on it a little bit, but I can give it a little more frame. I'll also combine, I guess, the genesis of the methodology. First and foremost, your earlier question, right? I don't think any one of us want another new term. So this isn't about a term, right? I think all of us would want nothing better than for this just to be a commerce benchmark, right? The reason for a term such as unified commerce is that it's a fundamental, you can roll your eyes at terms all day long, I don't care. But if you roll your eyes at the fact that we have been over the last 20 years doing things, making systems do things, processes do things that they were never designed to do, right? Then you're at a place of peril, which is we've got to understand and recognize that today's shopper demands not everything everywhere, not the same thing everywhere necessarily. They demand continuity, they demand context, they demand the fact that your best experience, if you really think about it, aren't necessarily the ones that give you the most, but the ones that please you the most. And a lot of times that's actually about choosing what not to do where. It's about using the natural strengths of each channel and to build on top of that continuous experience. So that's where we sort of started to say, hey, we need a benchmark of unification, of intelligence, of what is the right way for retailers to go out and engage and serve today's consumers that demand both hyper convenience on one side and then engagement on the other side, and somehow expect you to magically know when they want which, right? And for you to be able to rotate your operating model accordingly. So what we've done basically is go out there, we looked at specialty retail, 7 industry segments within specialty retail, 220 plus retailers. This is, in my perspective, and we've done some research on this, the world's most comprehensive, independent, mystery shopping-based or commerce audit-based benchmark. So we've gone out, looked at 300 plus customer experience capabilities. We've had 8 plus shopping trips that includes digital, in-store, call center. We've interacted with store associates. We've done real purchases, real returns, right? We've categorized all of that. We've correlated it with the impact of these capabilities on key metrics, such as your conversion, your average order value, right? And then we've assessed retailers on the quality, depth, and consistency of their deployment of that capability to rate them on a 4-point maturity scale: basic, developing, advanced, leading, right? And that's the foundational methodology behind it, and we've augmented it with some incremental qualitative and quantitative insights from retail executive surveys as well.
Well, hopefully some of your surveyors didn't get tagged as habitual returners.
In fact, funny story, we did. Your cards get declined. In fact, the retailers know later than banks do.
Yeah.
So, the bank was sometimes sort of processing the transaction and stopping it because, we were habitual returners. But it's interesting that the banks would know more than the retailers.
Yeah.
Don't ask about their credit scores. Okay?
No, we're not going to get into any PII. But and before we get into maybe some of the details of the report, what did you think were the big takeaways from what the data was that was brought to you?
He knows. I gave him a hard time. I go, only 5% are leaders? Then Giri went through this, right? 220 retailers in North America. That's pretty much all the major retailers. 5% are leaders. The way he said it was that, if life works perfectly, you have a perfect bell curve distribution, right? But in this case, the revenue growth, the AOV, the conversion rate, the retention rate, the fulfillment rate, the numbers and the business outcome from the leaders are so different. That cohort kind of break away from the pack. It's 5%. So what this tells me is that, we had, what percentage do we have in 2023? A little bit higher, right?
We're about 9%.
9%. So what this tells you is this: the consumers are getting even more. I know you don't like the word multi-channel, but they are. And guess what they are nowadays? They're on TikTok Shop, Instagram. So the channels keep expanding, right? So, and there's a sell direct and there's sell B2B to C. So your ability to keep up with the consumer is very important. So the game is changing every day. With AI, right? We're all going to have a digital avatar shopping on our behalf at some point in time. But regardless, so that 5% was very surprising to me, how small
Right.
that group is. And they excel. They grew 3 times faster than the rest of them. So that surprised me. The prize that you win for being in that leadership quadrant is huge, right? And I would say the other part that is kind of surprising is how much AI is underpinning everything. How you present the shopping experience. And one thing that's coming through very loud and clear is that the consumers are shopping because they want something. And if you cannot deliver that accurate real-time inventory availability information, when they can get it, how do they get it, literally at the beginning of the buyer's journey, you don't get to convert.
Sure. If you can't meet the demand, then you've lost
They are
the
asking
opportunity.
a whole lot. And of course, there's the dynamic content that's required to make it interesting. So that part was very surprising that the AOV for the leaders was 15% higher. That's a big number, right? And then
It
another
is
part,
also when you think about some of the size of those brands and what that means
yeah,
overall, when you're talking about multi-million, multi-billion-dollar organizations,
yes.
that's some significant dollars.
Yes, for sure. And I would say the last part, and you can jump in for sure, that kind of surprised me was the labor force, our people. They play a more important role than ever because today, physical store, it's changed. It's an experience hub. They come in to build relationships.
Sure.
Some of our advanced retailers turn that into TikTok influencer content creation hub.
Yeah.
Right?
The micro-influencers.
They're showing
Yes.
up and they're literally trying the latest, are we going to summer fashion? Okay, summer fashion. They're talking about what they like, what they don't like. That goes across clothing to consumer electronics, right? So if the brands are empowering their store associates to be ambassadors, which means they have to know the customer information, they can serve them, right? Provide discount, process return, do all kinds of things that you would normally consider them concierge service. It's a table stake now. But if you do it right, your customer lifetime value goes up
rewards are
1.25 times. I'm
enormous,
just kind of going, the people part,
Yeah.
it was really interesting, I have to say. Yeah.
The way I'd say it, I think, it's probably the most important bit, right, from
Yes.
a unified commerce perspective, because that's your glue. That is your one moment in which your shopper, who lives a digital life and a physical expression when they come into the store, your people are the ones that provide that continuity and that connection. So the last 15 years, retailers have spent figuring out how to distribute what was previously a physically locked item, your inventory. And they said e-commerce and digital commerce became about distributing inventory. I think unified commerce is all about distributing human expertise. Right? How does my outdoor gearhead, right, that's the highest converting associate on my Boston show floor, how do I distribute that expertise to impact not just that zip code,
Right.
but my entire commerce strategy? I think that's going to be the next 5-7 years of people really figuring out what people are really great at and then distributing that just as they distributed inventory.
Okay. So let's go back just for a second, because you mentioned the difference between the leader percentage of 9% to 5%. And Giri, you guys did this 2 years ago.
Yep.
So other than that, what were maybe some of the other big ahas or deltas
Right.
between what happened 2 years ago versus what you saw this year?
Sure. And maybe I'll actually just start with this idea of, because we focus so much on the 5% leaders, that I think one of the key findings, one of the ahas looking at 23 and 25 is, I actually think putting yourself in the position of potential leadership is way better than fleeting leadership itself. What I mean by that is, obviously there were some retailers in 23 that didn't make the leading segment in 25. But if I look at leaders from both of those areas, one thing stands out. No retailer that was basic or developing in 2023, right, made it to a leader in 2025. Okay. And no leader that was in 2023 regressed more than 1 or 2 levels down, right? So leadership is about strong foundations, first and foremost. You've got to put yourself in a position to be a leader. So as you know, for folks that consume the report, that look at the methodology, I'd say, let us focus beyond the 5% and really more on what we call the advanced category, which is quite a strong category, and you got to put yourself in the position to be a leader, right? Rather than simply aspiring for leadership. That's number one. Number two is what was extraordinary yesterday is ordinary today. 35% of what was considered differentiating capabilities that may have qualified you, scored you higher in 2023, 35% of those capabilities are table stakes now. Anne mentioned some of those earlier in the conversation. So that's huge, which is, well, you've got to change quick. You've got to move fast. You've got to keep an eye out on what's moving and where do I direct my finite resources. And that's my third sort of bit of observation is consistently, both in 23 and 25, leadership isn't about doing the most things. It is about doing those things that matter to your shoppers better than anyone else. So knowing your shopper and then having a customer obsession on one side, what's important to me in my business model and my customer, and then depth of experience, depth of capabilities, being able to say no. Like famously, Uniqlo, it's tough to return stuff, right, that you buy online. You can't just go return it in store. Just one simple dimension doesn't necessarily make you or break you. It's about knowing what I want to focus on and doing it really well.
Yep.
So I want to focus a little bit into going one level deep from a category perspective because, and you already indicated that the 4 key stages of this process and the journey is the shopping experience, the checkout experience, the fulfillment, and the service.
Yep.
And then if we look at the 7 different subcategories, what stood out? I know I read the report, so I have my own kind of interesting observations, but I'd love to hear from both of you. What stood out for you in terms of the differences between some of these distinct subcategories?
I'm going to say inventory visibility, because it doesn't matter which category that you're in, right? The ability to see in real time your inventory so that you can actually promise and fulfill correctly and give consumer the choice. So it's one thing to ship to me directly or pick up in store, but now you have to give them gradations, right? You can ship it to me overnight. I can wait for a couple of days. I can go to the store. Giving them the flexibility a lot of times makes, now, you didn't have that before. Now it's very important. And what's interesting for us, some of the leaders are very smart about using BOPUS. Some of them trying to get more people come into the store with BOPUS so they can develop that high touch experience, especially if you want to build a loyalty program. You kind of need that, right? And by the way, that includes returned as well. Sometimes you can return to the store for free. If you want to ship it, yes, you could, but if you want to mail it, that might cost you money, right? So there's various ways, I would say, between the subcategories that the best practice goes all the way across. So I would say fulfillment flexibility is very key. And some of the leaders actually were looking at a 31% increase in fulfillment costs. That's significant. How do you do that and still drive up customer CSAT?
Right.
That's an interesting area to think about. Yeah.
Giri, any thoughts on?
Yeah, I'll do the segmental analysis. I think there were some really cool, interesting things that sort of jumped out. If you sort of look at, and maybe it's a continuation of the 23-25, the earlier strength sort of coming out of the post-COVID response, right? Because leadership, in a certain sense, is a long tail event, right? Your investments must have happened 12, 18 months ago for you to be in a position of strength today. So that's the other interesting bit that I would have people reflect on. What you are doing today has a long tail impact. So we had cosmetics and department stores that did really well in 2023. But again, a cautionary tale is that we've seen them tail off because they haven't necessarily added on to that position of strength as much as they could have. Right? So as a group, we've got cosmetics and department stores sort of tailing off behind a little bit because, back to that point, 35% of those differentiating capabilities from 2023 have moved on. We've got to continuously innovate, move on to something that is relevant today. And what we found is luxury retail, which was by far and away the most lagging behind industry segment in 2023, has made the most significant improvements, perhaps waking up to some of the headwinds that the industry has been facing over the last 12 to 24 months, where the badge just isn't enough anymore necessarily. The brand isn't going to be just enough. You have to provide the consumer the sort of convenience and personalization and personal touch that they deserve, that they want. So you've got luxury bumping up. And we'd introduced in this year a new segment that we hadn't covered before, which was consumer electronics. And what was really fascinating to me was specifically in the checkout space, right? You can see consumer electronics really show you how things should be done now, from complete sort of mobile scan and go to hybrid, checkout, where a lot of retailers are figuring out, hey, let me put all the automated checkout in one area. What some of the consumer electronics players are figuring out is, hey, I need that human-assisted hybrid checkout, and they're sort of placing it now in nicer areas where you can, back to the point, you can go in and be fully efficient if you want, and you can ask for help when you need, and they don't have to destroy their operating model to do that. So some cool things really jumped out.
Yeah, and I also, when I saw that quadrant, those 4 quadrants, it also really struck me that there's a ripple effect is just the overall health of the business, right? I mean, we know that department stores now, except for maybe a small group, are having a hard time, right? I mean, it's well documented that, you know, the department store that runs a Thanksgiving parade every year isn't as strong as they were in the past. And luxury is making a huge rebound, especially coming out of COVID. So when we think about, you actually call out a handful of brands. So let's talk to us a little bit, Anne, of some of those brands. And if I'm out there and I'm in this crawl, walk, run phase, right, and I haven't gotten to being a leader or advanced, what are some of the brands that are in the leaders? Who are they? And what is it that somebody out there can learn from? What is that best practice?
Maybe I'll do Sephora. It's one of the leaders. If they have a awesome history, right? When they started Sephora.com, was it 6 or 7 years ago, they would have been happy with 20 million. I believe they just crossed 3 billion last year. Just the .com part of their business is huge. So that experiential online, and when you go into the store, if you're part of the Beauty Insiders program, the personalization that carries over into the physical store, and you can consume online, experience in store. The sales associates are fully empowered with everything that you're interested in. They literally blur that line between online, and so that's a success story that I would say is very key that all of us can learn from. And I don't think it's just saying luxury or consumer electronics. I'll be honest with you, nobody is perfect all the time. So it's very good to look at your full body, if you will, from all those 4 categories and really understand where you are. In some area that you're strong, some area you're not as strong. And the best innovation takes place not by looking at direct competitors. The best innovation takes place when you look at adjacent space that you can learn from. It's got nothing to do with your business. I would invite people not to get too segment oriented, but look at, even if you are a beauty or footwear, look at consumer electronics and vice versa. That's how you learn. So UCB is meant for retail at large. So I would say, don't get you pledge allegiance to the retailing industry overall. And if you keep an eye on your consumers, Gen Z has broken retail, period. Right?
So if I think about Sephora, I would think one of the other characteristics of the Sephora brand is that they've always been willing to take risk and
try new things.
Be out there, right? They had very early, they had Color IQ and all the different within the store where they were really testing early AI and the idea of augmented reality. So
and I would say Apple the same thing. We love Apple Genius Bar. You go to Apple, that one store does everything. You can shop, you can browse, you can try, right? You can pay, obviously, in all kinds of different payment methods. It's frictionless. You go there for the Genius Bar to get service, right? So you have brands like Arc'teryx, for example. They have a rebirth center right there. So when you go into the store, they are so scientific in how they measure the consumer experience that if you want to try something, they literally start the clock. That how long does it take for the associate to bring you back that exact item that you're interested in? They don't want to waste the consumer's time. And then they just started Rebirth, which is repairing services right on site for some of their flagship stores, is absolutely awesome. So I think, the retailer to think about, for those of us lucky enough to have online and offline business, you need to make that experience truly count. And it's not just Apple from a consumer electronics perspective or Arteria. They're all learning from each other. So I would say, let the UCB be your guide. Pick the best practices that you think applicable to your business and go. And that's the best way to grow. Yeah.
Well, you kind of jumped ahead a little bit of where I was going to start to wrap things up with, but that's okay. I'm going to give you another shot at it.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
No. And
did I read your mind, Michael?
You did.
I did.
Yes,
Okay.
yes.
All right.
You've been reading my mind.
Yeah, my husband tells me that all the time, by the way.
Okay.
I finish his sentences for him. I know.
Yeah. So as I've been listening to both of you, some of the big takeaways for me have been, the idea that it is the full shopper journey, right? Those 4 stages.
Yep.
As you just mentioned, think outside of your own category. Don't just look at the competitors, but maybe even go outside. If we think about the travel industry, think about financial services.
The best checkout experience is Uber.
Yeah.
Right? No retail.
Yeah.
The best personalization experience is Netflix. So those are the experiences that your shoppers can't compartmentalize. So just because you're a bank or you're a grocery store or you're a specialty retailer, I don't compartmentalize.
There's great best practices across all industries. So look outside of your own. And then I would just ask, if I'm early in the journey, what should I think about first? What's that first thing? What's whether it's
you're not
analyzing?
gonna like this answer because the answer is it depends, right? What I would invite people to do is go to unifiedcommercebenchmark.com, one word, right? unifiedcommercebenchmark.com. Just take a look at the report. You as a retailer, what your business is like, right? Your customer base, what the all multi-generational chances are, right? But the skewing and the distribution among the generation might be a little different. If you're Gen Z, unfortunately, this are my kids. They stuck their nose up to the big top. They don't want to go into the big top box retail stores. They want to do everything online, right? So you may want to
I've heard that some of the younger demographics actually like the human connection.
That would be nice, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Just get them out of the house.
There's another study I saw somewhere that actually said that as much as we think the younger demographics are digital only, they also are interested in the human connection. But
I'm gonna park that with the real estate people and the retail design experience designers, because I agree with you. But do know your customer base first. And then I would say read the report. There's a high-level executive summary. I think when you read it, you will have a pretty good sense as you go through all the attributes, right? High level, like you kind of know what you're having issues with. Do you have too high of an acquisition cost, and that you should be doing it better to serve your returning customers? That would change your mix quite a bit, right? If you're not converting well, focus on shopping, right? If people are abandoning their shopping cart a lot, maybe you should focus on the checkout experience, right? If you're not getting enough loyalty and return customer, the lifetime customer value is not going up, then maybe you should think about like customer service and fulfillment. And if your service cost is way up, you may want to think about a chatbot that sits on top of orders, which, by the way, is responsible for 60% of all your calls or chats, inquiries, okay? So if you can talk to a chatbot and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, I changed my mind. I don't want that red sweater, I want a blue one. And by the way, ship it to my sister's house and not to me. And that can be done automatically, which is happening now. We're doing this with Google. We have a thing called Maven. For our customer that run our order management system, customer can self-service by calling, emailing, text, all that. You can change stuff before things get shipped to you.
Right.
That cuts down on your return and cuts down on unnecessary calls. There's a cost to calls and cost for inquiries, right? So we're seeing at least 30% less.
Right. So it depends.
Yeah, it depends.
And there is no silver bullet. And
no.
And it's going to really take a little bit of analysis to understand and self-awareness.
Correct.
Of where you are, where are the chinks in the armor, where are the opportunities and the low-hanging fruit, as well as the big win with the long term. So
Like you go to your doctor, right? They'll say, okay, Anne, maybe it's your thyroid, or maybe it's your cardiovascular, maybe it's your BMI. You got to start somewhere, but each
Okay.
brand is unique. So you kind of have to answer that on their own. Yeah.
okay, Giri, what are your parting words?
Yeah, I mean, on this, I'd say it depends is the only answer, is the correct answer. However, there's one thing I'd add is we never want the benchmark, right, to be hey, if you do these 20 things, you're great. If you don't, you're not. That's absolutely not the right way to sort of look at the value of the benchmark or how organizations should start. They should absolutely start where Anne said, start with a customer obsession, figuring out what matters to your shoppers. Second, what matters to your operating model. Right? What does digital mean to you? What does unified mean to you? And what the benchmark can give you now is a very detailed parameterized alignment of that to identify for impacting those metrics, for impacting those experiences. These are the things that I should be focused on. Am I deficient? Am I mature? What should I do? Where should I begin? From a technological standpoint, the place that we're starting people, what we're seeing people sort of start is get rid a little bit of that old tech legacy, if you have any. And then today's new technological approaches just allow you to go faster, start incrementally, identify the issues and the challenges that you need, right? There's areas you can plug in and say, hey, I want to very quickly be able to it's important for my customers in my category to get a 2-hour delivery promised window. And I can't do that today. Well, you don't have to think about replatforming. You can go take a surgical approach and figure out what are the experiences that you need to build and go build them, right? Test them and optimize them.
Great. Well, I think it's important that everybody that's listening go out and download the report. Again, the URL for the report is
unifiedcommercebenchmark.com.
Thank you. And this has been Rethink Retail 2025 Unified Commerce Benchmark for Specialty Retailers.